There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print and say that this thing has got to go. And we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
All right, we're doing it. Okay, so hello, cousins. Thank you for joining us for another all-new episode of Social Contract. We are live, live and in charge, large and in charge.
Good
You get a
morning,
lot
good
of questions
afternoon.
about that. Yes. Hello, Mr. Mayor Jared. We are glad to have you back. I know I am. We missed out last week on having him because we always have these tech problems, which I know that like American internet, you guys can all sympathize. You know what this is like. If it's not problems with my internet or something going on my end, it's his. So we've had a lot of tech problems in the last few episodes. So apologies.
This one was a full-on power. I just didn't have power. I'm at home on my
and
phone.
then
like,
he
hey.
trumped it all because he had like no power. like 2 seconds before the show, he's like, "Hey." Power's
I think it was like
out.
it was on purpose because I could see across the street. So I'm like, why is my power off? Because technically across the street from me is a different town because we're like on the line of where like one suburb becomes another. But yeah, they were working on the power line somewhere, and the power was out from then until when I left for work. Then I came back and it was on again, but
it was
we
Trump.
had like most of the
Trump
day.
He's trying to oppress and repress us so that people can't hear it and can't listen to our very important messages. But
I'm surprised they've had more power outages here than zero, and you wouldn't think because we don't have like thunderstorms where the tree falls on the wire. That's usually what knocks your power out, at least if you're in most of the country. And here, most of our power lines are buried, again, depending on which suburb you are in. So anytime Glendale, Arizona's power is going out, I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Like, how is this? This isn't an old city. Like, these lines aren't that old. They can't be, can they?
Mine are still above ground in my area, and every now and again, like, it's gotten better over the years, but every now and again, like, you know, it doesn't really have to be any reason. Maybe the reason is squirrel. You will hear like a boom, and you'll know, and everything goes out, and you'll know it was like one of the transformers. The explosion of a transformer around nearby. So it's kind of old, but it's like pretty well maintained, I guess. Like, I hate to give any utility company any kind of credit for anything, but that's pretty much what's going on. It seems like it's happening less and less in my area, at least. So, you know,
that is
right,
good. And I hope that happens with me. Hopefully, whatever they fixed is fixed.
Yeah, exactly. And same with the internet. It seems like it's functioning a little bit better. And I do think the internet lines maybe. Well, actually, no. I think they're above ground too. Come to think of it. Well, anyways, we're hoping for at least minimal tech interference for this episode. But last week, I was by myself, and I still managed to talk for an hour and some, which I don't know why that always surprises me that I can do that. I was just like, oh, all right, here we go. Because we were looking forward to having that conversation and having that episode. So it was a big disappointment that Jared wasn't able to join us. So we're going going to give him the opportunity to talk a little bit about what he missed out on. And if you weren't there, we had I talked to the camera for an hour about essentially these rallies that Bernie and AOC are holding, and how that they are just grifts to pull in money that they're going to put towards whatever dog shit candidate, Mayor Pete or something like that, or Gavin Newsom at the end of the cycle. They're kind of implying that like they're going to be the ones, and we're so far past that at this point, and that's kind of the issue too. These things they're disingenuous. They're looping people right back into the Democratic nonsense that they really need to get away from, just straight off forgetting that they have been betrayed by the Democratic Party, and that's like the way that it is, because these parties, as we're always saying, are united and are in collusion over the fact that they serve the same donors and want the same things. Therefore, it's very disingenuous on their part. They're raising money from people, a lot of vulnerable people who really can't spare it, and it puts us in a position to where, there's nothing even going on. We're only a few months into this Trump presidency. We all know it's going really fucking badly. But, it's really, really taking advantage of people who that they know that they could take advantage of, and getting people to fall right back into lockstep who were really upset with the Democratic Party. Because it's not just stands, that is falling for this. So
I'm sure you went over this a lot last week while I was sitting in the dark in my house, but that's part of the issue. Like, that's why you see this going on right now. Is there is every time there's all kinds of off ramps from the uniparty system that we have here. Like, something will happen at some point that will shake you out of it if you're paying attention. Some people it just never happens to, but like that's kind of what happened to the two of us. At some point, something happened, and in my case, it was I watched Bernie get they're like, oh, he's not even allowed to be an option for us to maybe vote for, because that's how dangerous he's considered to even his little reform. We probably would have gotten if they would have just let him win. If they would have put him against Trump, he would have won. Sorry, everybody. I'm just going to throw out some. Well, how do you know? He would, all right. He would have won. He probably would have got at most maybe 2 federal days paid sick leave for everyone. We might have gotten that. We still would have the lowest number of them of any developed country, but still, we'd have that.
We would have been fought on every possible thing, assuming he really did go through with putting things forward.
It would have been like Obama, but maybe a little bit. He still would have to be on TV every week, everybody, I'm trying my hardest, but we just have to go to war, and I can't close Guantanamo. But hey, we got those 2 days. Got your 2 federal sick days, which is at least something, and that might have quelled the peasant uprisings for a few more years, and instead we got Trump twice, and oh man. So now that to try to avoid people taking these off ramps out of either the Democrat or Republican Party, honestly, I'm not trying to act like one is better than the other. That's my whole shtick. They are the same. Right. To try and avoid people taking those off ramps, that's why now you see what is it anytime they're talking about the Democrats, it's what can we do? What can we change? What can we improve? The Democrats are in a horrible position. Blah blah blah. Because they want you to go, oh, they're fixing the problem. Whatever, and then they let you project onto what you think they're actually doing, because what they're doing is nothing. But they're going to whip out your AOCs and Bernie Sanders, who get to go on a tour and go, hey, everybody, the Democrats are ineffective, and we need to really change what our party's doing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm over here like, Bernie, I thought you were an independent. And you know that at the end of the day, this will at most be I don't know, AOC vice president. It's too early for her. I think she's got to stick around in the Senate and Congress for a while. Yeah, it was Congress, not Senate. Or what I think it will more likely become is he will do what he did every time, Bernie. He will do what he did every time in the past, and he will endorse whoever the Democrat is, and then drop out and just do rallies for whoever that is, because they have dirt on his wife. His wife basically ran a Trump university, a scammy, not full scam. She has people's money that she really shouldn't have by running a university, and every time. Anytime that ends up back in the news, you see Bernie running out to vote for Kamala Harris, please. I'll do whatever you say. I assume you covered most of that last week.
I did, for the most part. One thing I didn't really get into, because it's we don't really know the breadth of the situation. But again, we also kind of have to think about And I'm not saying Bernie specifically. I'm just saying, like, overall, like a lot of Democrats, particularly, like why everything's quiet. There's probably a good number of, like, in reality, of like Epstein's connections in there that want to keep that covered up. And now that they're kind of at the mercy of, Mossad, essentially, who are blackmailing them, maybe other entities as well. We just know that they're like, and that's the Israeli blackmail force, essentially. So I don't know, like, really, like, what we're really talking about is in terms of that, but like, when you bring up blackmail, there is a lot of people subject to that, because we know with money and corruption and stuff like that, people think that they can do what they want, and then they find out down the line, hey, you actually can't. So now you're going to do what you're told, and that could be another reason that we have so much Israel sympathy going on at this point, when it seems like, what the hell is going on? Like, none of this should factor into anything. We don't even have roads. So that's the only thing I didn't really cover, that angle. But for the most part,
Bernie has his wife for blackmail, and AOC, I don't think it's necessarily blackmail on her. She's the one, because I fully bought into it. I'm like, oh god, this lady's awesome. She says such cool things. She's so nice. She's like dances and is fun. And
it's more that she was an op than anything. Like, not.
Well, you find out that because you hear psychos yelling like AOCIA, she's a plant, she's blah blah, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you look into it, and it's like, oh right, her whole late teenage years was spent. She was working with the Kennedy. She was interning with the Kennedys, like Ted Kennedy. She's just been around in those circles for most of her young adult, like since she turned like 16. She's just been around. She's going on trips and internships, and she's just kind of. To be a bit vulgar here, she's part of the swamp. She just is a swamp creature, like in the same way that a lot of these people are. Because remember, they don't actually run anything. They don't make the decisions. They are simply the paid puppet performers who get on and try and like advertise you into doing it. They're the spokesperson, and they are for the most part, they want trained like company men, like people who are already down with the system, who know what's going on, they know how it works, they know what you're supposed to say, what you're not supposed to say, and they may or may not believe the things, but that's like irrelevant. They, like I said, they are the marketers. They might as well be getting on TV with a can of Coca-Cola to tell you how delicious Coke is. Like, drink Coke, woo! Like,
they're willing to
bomb
do it.
Iran, woo!
That's the thing. It's people who are willing. They don't have morals or positions or points to be. They're willing to be Johnny on the spot. And in the traditional sense of grooming, that's what we're talking about, where you literally take someone to mold into the image from a young age into what, someone who will do whatever you say, the trained monkey, like you do whatever you say and we'll do it.
I know a lot of these like poli-sci students who are like in their 20s. I used to know them, or do know a couple of them, and some of them are just like, yes, I'm a lobbyist now, and it's like, oh my god, how do you do this? Like,
yeah,
are you happy? Like, are you happy with your life?
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's basically where I didn't really get too deep into the conspiracy of it, but more about the fact that this is a grift in the way that it's taking advantage of people, because
and they're asking you for money, which is the craziest part. That is definitely just going in the Democrat bucket.
Absolutely, and the fact of it is like they are rallying people primarily out of fear, because they have really got people rattled about the idea of Trump 2028, which he himself has already said is going to happen. And I don't have any reason not to believe him. I don't think this fucker will ever die.
Are they going to run J.D. Vance, and then when he gets in, he drops out and lets Trump be the president? Because that's what they would have to do.
Well, no,
85-year-old Donald Trump.
You're right. It's like, but he can do it though. That's like, it's just he can't do it. Like, you're not allowed to run be more than two consecutively. Like, there shouldn't really, and it's not like anybody's putting any resistance up against anything that he's doing, so can you really say that, and when 4 years from now or 3 and some years from now, that wouldn't be the case? Like, they wouldn't be like, hey, no, we're doing it, it's fine, and everybody's like, okay, it's fine. Everything he's done has pretty much gone unchallenged at this point. And then
it is pretty wild how there is there's no other
opposition
Trump-like figure that they can. Yeah, like he's currently easily the most effective puppet. Like, who they want to swap him for? Gavin.
He's enacting the most like all of us on the left especially are always like Reagan, about everything. But the thing of it is the main thing that Reagan set in to do. His intention was to shrink government down to, basically like a monarchy, like get rid of, that was his main thing. And he
Which is really
really
funny
wasn't.
because if you look at the numbers, the government has only gotten
Yeah,
larger.
he really wasn't able to do like what his main goal of setting things off to do. So they really kind of had to just do other crimes. Like all of his cabinet eventually went to prison.
Even after all this Doge shit, I bet you we're still going to somehow end up with a larger government. Like, even if you're just measuring it in terms of, like, I don't know, dollars, like, it's still going to somehow be bigger in another 3 years than it was when they got there. It's like everybody who does that's like, I'm now just my dad talking from the past, where he used to be a Republican because he wanted smaller government. He's like, I'm tired of, like, I want to reduce the size, and he noticed, like, wow, every time we vote for these people who say they're going to reduce the size of government, they don't. They just do it in a direction they campaigned on, and then get more in your business. Like,
Right.
He's like, you're supposed to be voting for George W. Bush to get him out of your freaking life, and then the Patriot Act happened, and it's like, great, this is so much smaller government, hooray!
So that's exactly where the Trump campaign really is succeeding, is that they have really picked up that specific torch and are at least trying on the surface to run with it. It remains to be seen how overall, again, we're only a few months in. Shit is nuclear, and we're only a few months in here, which is exactly what they want. They want us all running in circles. And it's been a reason why we've had some difficulty reporting on things, because everything is coming out like a solid brick of shit. We can't really decipher the issue, because tomorrow we sit here and say something, and tomorrow it'll change and go back or another direction. And he'll be like, I had a good phone call, or I got bullied, and and it's
I'm
like,
trying
no,
to separate
I'm
trying to separate the headlines of, like, reports or plans from what actually happened, because even just looking back at, like, the stuff they said was definitely happening a month ago, like, just how much of it didn't. For instance, remember when he said he was going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there? What happened to that? Why didn't he go? Because I personally don't think it's there either. So that'd be amazing. He's just him with a camera, like, we're here, and as you can see, there is no.
Geraldo Rivera style, like, open it up.
Exactly. He's going to open the vault. He's opening Fort Knox to see if the gold's actually there. Because frickin', I don't know. I don't want to get too much into. I've now read enough economics that I can understand why the gold standard was a thing and what leaving it meant, and the fact that, like, if you want to judge the true value of your dollar over time, the only real scale you can do it on is, like, the price of gold. And right now, gold is, like, over $3,000 an ounce. So if you judge inflation based on that, we are paid like 1/60 penny a day. Like, our currency is just worth freaking nothing anymore, and you can see that just because what does it buy you? Like, you go to the grocery store and spend $50 on, like, 1 day worth of stuff. It's like, all right, I got milk, eggs, bread, and butter, and that was $48.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to the chat. Hey to Are You Time Traveler 2, one of our first ever fans. They are asking, what do you think about last night's filibuster with Cory Booker?
There was a filibuster? Did it work?
Well, my guess is no. I actually did not have a chance to look into it before the show today, but I know that he's been, I don't really know what his point was or his purpose. But
because the rules are you don't even have to actually filibuster, right? Like, you don't actually have to stand up there and talk like you used to in, like, the 60s.
No, but people have been up there like assholes and just, like, read, like, children's books or told stories or done
it's
whatever.
It's like to prove a point. To, like,
right, exactly. It's always a political stunt, and right now, if he's doing it for any reason, whatever it is, it's not going to work. First of all, never was intended to work, whatever it was. But the idea is it's really just the same with the Bernie AOC thing. We're coming out with it's sort of, think of it like a race, like we're trying to, like, who's ahead right now, okay, like, who's the most popular. And that's why the one thing I did talk about last week is, why is it Bernie and AOC? Because obviously their internal polling and their all the analytics firms that they pay to look at the landscape of things in a million different directions, that they're paying millions of dollars to find out and poll and figure those guys are the ones that seem to be pretty Teflon when it comes to opinions with the Democrats.
They're the closest to populist we've ever been allowed to have. The closest.
Exactly. And Cory Booker, even though he's dog shit, he also doesn't really have that bad of a standing in that race, right? Like, if we're our polling race here, our imaginary polling race I'm doing with my hands. So they put him in that situation 18 hours. All right.
I forget about
I
his
always
big
wonder
dumb
if you
face.
wear like an adult nightie when they're doing that. Like you're just like you just going to town. Go up there. They should have one of those backpacks with the drink in it.
Yeah, Camelback.
Right? Yeah. And so like whatever, the reason that he was chosen to do this is obviously for fitness reasons. I can't imagine like you'd put up like some 85-year-old broken hip person up there and be like 18 hours of counting. But obviously because like, whatever his deal is, it's over. This is a political stunt to make it look like they're doing something.
Remember the
Because
time Cory Booker pulled a fire alarm to very briefly delay a vote he didn't want to happen? He's
and
the
that's the
stunt
thing,
guy.
like people don't give a shit, like they're like the Democratic strategy is always like, oh, we can't do it, it's not possible, you don't know how government works, incrementalism, and then
We are the mommy
Republicans
and
come in
daddy.
there and they mow everything the fuck down, and it's just like leaving people reeling, right? And then it's like, why couldn't you guys do this? And they're like, you don't understand how government works, everything is incremental, it takes time to do these things,
Look,
due
you little
process,
baby.
all this crap, right? So when they pretty much took heat this time around for being just a little too inactive, a little too complacent, a little too in league with the Republicans, then there was a very, very big push for a moment. It's pretty much over now, but a big push for the moment to abandon the Democratic Party. And that's when we saw those polls come out that said 7% approval rating, lowest we've ever seen, 27% approval rating, lowest we've ever seen.
And you gotta
then they're
run
like,
these
oh
stunts to try
shit,
and keep you from
they
waking
caught
up.
us. Well, we actually have to pretend like we're going to do something. And that's what this is. That's what the rallies are. That's what whatever this, this crap
It's
is.
so weak. It's less than it just gets more
It's-
performative and less
performative.
What is the demand? What are the demands that are being made? What is the policy that's being proposed? What is the change they're saying that they want to have happen? It is
And look,
nothing
it
other
says
than
right there, it says on the screen, by midday, over 48,000 people were watching his live stream. That's what they're going for. Performance. And that's what these guys think that they are in the first place. They want to be celebrities, but they don't have any skills. They can't go act. They can't
these
do
are
anything.
not good numbers either. 48,000. That's it.
Yeah, but that makes it sound like a lot because again, something I mentioned in the last, and maybe you know about this, whoever runs Bernie's account put out a post like last week or the end of the week before that said that they were like, wow. And it said that they had gotten 15,000 people at a venue to come to a venue in Tempe. And they were like, it's amazing. We're coming together, yada, yada, yada. Well, first of all, and then what I said, but first of all, it's like, okay, have you seen how many people come to a Taylor Swift concert? Like, they will fill out a fucking stadium. So don't talk to me about your 15,000 people, right? You have like a small country of people coming out to see Taylor Swift play guitar, talk shit. So like that, like there's that, first of all. Second of all, they want to make that sound like, oh, we're uniting, we're doing something, we're moving, we're making, we're doing. And then like they're gonna pull the rug out or the football out like just every other, time that they do it. And then it'll be like, oh, a nevertheless situation, or we got to vote for him anyway, or we're gonna get another Trump situation. That's what we're at, and that's what they know. So they're doing the bare minimum of what it takes to make it look like they're not being totally inactive because they got being totally inactive caught doing it, essentially.
It's amazing that the response is okay. Like, what was that? I'm trying to think of things I've heard of the various like resistance things. I know they did like an interpretive dance as a protest at like.
Oh God, that was so dumb. I
literally-
think I mentioned that one at some point.
That didn't even half make the news. It's just nobody cared at all. It's just like that image
So
of all the senators and Congress people kneeling, but with like the kente cloth around, like after George Floyd, and it's like, wow, how many people did that feed or house or whatever? They have
that bring the price of eggs down? Question mark.
Nobody is offering anything to anyone. Like, you have the vague, like you're saying, the price of eggs, like at least a little bit of an acknowledgement of stuff being expensive, but I haven't seen an executive order that is like a price control or something actually aimed at that. I've seen the tariffs, which are the tariffs happening or not? Every week it's like this country, but actually no, but then this country, but it has a 30-day pause on that, and then this country, but actually not. Unless this country does this, then like the only way to actually go about solving the issues that we have in America is the deconstruction of finance capital, and that is the one thing that we can't do. So we just keep looking at this, we're just staring at it like, man, I wish this thing would do something different. It's like, why would it? Why would it start? So the question to me becomes, are they just spinning wheels and trying to get the last of the money they possibly can before it all falls apart? Because the Democrats fundraise much, much better under like a Republican president under Trump. Trump was like record numbers of all time for Democrat fundraising. So is it just hurry, squeeze the last bit of money we can, send AOC and Bernie out? They're the ones that they hate the least. See if we can get a few more nickels out of these suckers. And then what? It all just leads to, all right, vote for... They're freaking talking about they're going to run Kamala Harris again. It's like, all right, why don't you just take your money and bet it on nothing? It's like not betting black, red, or green. I bet orange. It's like, that's not a color on the wheel. Orange!
Well, how many times on our show have we talked about, not even just in the past, recent history, but like our entire history, we've been talking about both parties play the long game. They don't care if they don't win necessarily, because if they lose, they go into fundraising mode. And as you just said, the Democrats raise, fucking ass loads of money off of people that can't afford it, that are just desperate for change. And that's where the grift of it comes in. And that's where, and we say grift gets thrown around a lot, but it's like, that is at its core,
that's the definition.
Yeah, it's taking advantage of the most vulnerable people in society. I mean, we obviously know they have their big ticket donors who buy plates to dinners and yada yada yada. But we know that this is taking the advantage of the most vulnerable people in society and be like, give anything you can give. Anything is going to help us. What does that sound like? That sounds like evangelical churches, right? That are just out there Jesus needs your money and I'm going to spend it on a speedboat. This is not righteous gemstones. This is it's seriously like the worst people using methods that they know will work by fanning the flames of fear in the most vulnerable people and being like, okay, even your dollar works. You think a dollar won't spend? They'll take your dollar. Your $5, they're like, give us just $2, just $2. Oh, I can give $2. Well, you think, okay, that wasn't much for me right now, but hopefully it'll account for something. It's not going to account for anything. That's going to continue for them to just keep taking and taking and taking, even if they don't have a clear direction or an answer to where that money is going to ultimately go. They don't owe, you give them the $2. You can give anybody $2. Did they owe you an explanation of where that $2 is going to go? Ultimately, I'm taking these $2 and I'm going to X. No, they don't. So
why do I get Act Blue emails? Because I signed up and went to a Bernie Sanders rally like 8-10 years ago, whatever at this point, and now I'm just on the regular ass Democrat fundraise list till the end of time. They took the money that I gave them and just put it into they gave it to basically Nancy Pelosi. Like, here you go, put this shit on the stock market. Maybe it'll make sense.
You're right.
If I search,
we don't know. We literally don't know if I think that there would be some investigation going into if they were literally taking that money personally, because obviously there's probably some tax fraud involved in there.
You put it through enough layers that nobody can actually get in trouble for it.
That's the thing. It effectively is its own money laundering system, because yes, you gave the money willfully and you didn't necessarily expect anything back from it. But once that they put it through a shell company and fake nonprofit and government entity and
all the celebrities that got Kamala Harris money, she just booked like a whole tour for various celebrities who all got to and I know some of them said they didn't take money, but I'm like, one, I don't believe you, and two, you're an idiot. You didn't take money for that. You gotta get paid. Don't just sell yourself.
Some people that had to cancel on because they couldn't afford to pay them. I know Alanis Morissette was one of them. They couldn't afford to pay Alanis Morissette. What was that, like a couple hundos out there?
You just got to have a big lib money party where everyone's just like, quick, run in, grab everything you can, run back out. We know Harris is gonna lose. She's deeply unpopular. That's why we didn't let anyone vote against her or for her. We just threw her up there.
Yeah, so that they ultimately, it is kind of a smash and grab situation, like you were saying, is they just find a way to funnel money back into themselves, which they will ultimately personally gain from in some capacity. We're not necessarily saying like they're walking away with the basket of money at the end of the day, but they're smarter than that. And that's why we want you, we know we're probably preaching to the choir here, but what we always just kind of hope is like we can give you talking points to tell your liberal parents or whatever, you know what I mean, or like somebody else. Be like, hey, we're being taken advantage of. This is a lie in the worst possible time of things, and we know that this is horrible. We live in this is like no absolution of like anything Trump or Doge or Musk or those idiots are doing. They're horrible. It's horrible. It's so horrible. It's hard to even center in on what to talk about. But that's why we are so hard on the Democrats, because in an effective world, an effective political system that wasn't completely compromised by money, we would have the Democrats out there like literally doing these Cory Booker stunts like every moment, constantly. They would be constantly a thorn in the side.
They'd
of
also
these
have something to
Republicans.
offer. They would be
Yes.
saying, all right, here's the thing we're going to do to fight against that.
Yes,
Not just
yes.
like, hatred is bad. It's like,
Yeah, and what are you gonna
That's
do
all they
about it?
got.
Yeah, right. Okay, it's something I did mention last week, which was that I saw a quote by almost a quotation. I saw a quotation by Tim Walz, who, if you recall, was Kamala's running mate.
He's running rallies too.
And he said, yeah, he's kind of coming out, and then and Shmilan's all like, this guy's so mean. He's so mean to me. And it's like, all right, you 5 minutes ago said empathy is a disease, and you're like gonna sit there and cry about Tim Walz being mean to you. Go fuck yourself, you idiot. So, anyways, Tim Walz had said something to the effect that, obviously I don't have it like memorized, but to paraphrase Tim Walz, he said something that like, if we're going to come back in any kind of functional party, any kind of votable situation, we're going to have to offer them things like universal health care, like you're going to have to give them like the bare minimum of something, like some job guarantees, universal health care, something, like we're going to have to offer them fucking something at this point. And it's like, okay, first of all, poor you. Second of all, like, duh fucking monthly, headline on Duh Monthly, thank you so much for this, for clarifying this fucking situation, because like that, you figured out what the bare minimum is, and it's still not going to ultimately.
And that was the bare minimum in 2008. That was the bare minimum when we were running freaking Al Gore.
Right, exactly. And years ago, like, so back in the 90s, Hillary Clinton was trying to get a bill for universal health care.
Universal health care. Whoa.
And it blew up so badly against her that like it was so unpopular and blew up so badly against her that it turned she was like ridiculed like so savagely.
They had to strategically deploy. They had to use Hillary because only Hillary could make people not want free healthcare.
Right. And she really wasn't anybody but Bill's wife at that time. Like, it was way back up in the history of, way back up and in there.
She was a senator. She became a senator in a state she like kind of lived in, and it very looks like, you are the rich lady, right? And you will be given a position now. And then she lived, which I will never not bring up because it's hilarious. Well, it's not hilarious, it's horrible. But they lived in the governor's mansion in Arkansas, where they still to this day use unpaid prison labor, also known as slaves.
Yeah, they do. They do. And Mississippi basically runs on it. Everybody knows that that's like the situation. Not like their economy runs on slavery, and their literal government, the governor's mansion, like literally runs on actual slaves. Yep. It's they never stopped doing it, and nobody noticed. And you think it stopped now? And
start running on a reduced work week. In the 40s, after we fought for the 40-hour work week, they then were like, and now to the 30-hour work. Like, heads of industry were saying, yeah, man, in another like 20 years, we're probably going to have like a 10-hour work week. And you have all the charts and all the projections, and there is no reason, if you just take the basic of how much our productivity has increased, how much more work gets done with 1 hour of 2025 labor versus 1 hour of 1930 labor. Like, it's just... it is. You can do hundreds of times more stuff in less time just because we're on freaking computers now. Like, we have various cool machines. Why doesn't somebody run? That's what I need an organized communist party to do. We need to start rallying people on, look, we're taking the work week down to 1 day. We're doing a 1 day work week. Actually, we're doing a 1 day work month. That's all you're going to need, everybody. You'll work in January and you're done for the year, because there's literally no reason we couldn't do that if we started effectively using our technology that already exists, not like some future thing.
People that are trying to smash and grab everything they can before that they can't profit as well off of it. And Bill Gates,
come and do it.
Did you see the quote from Bill Gates from a couple of days ago?
Bill Gates said it. He said the thing I always say. He's like, we need to reduce the work week. I'm like, what is happening?
2 day. I think it was like a 2-hour work week. He said, well, that shithead. He's not talking about like, oh, you're gonna get. He said, like, I think it was in like 10 years or something, or less than that, less than 10 years, we'd be working on a 2-hour work week. First of all, that's the idea. Second of all, he did not say anything about, because we will be doing so materialistically well, people will be living and getting paid from all these taxes that we're charging these companies that run on automation, and everybody's going to get UBI and healthcare and anything that they possibly need. And
He's
And
about population reduction, so when Bill Gates says it, it's because he thinks billions must die.
yes, that's what my point is. He wasn't saying because things are going to be great, because policy is going to change in your favor. He's saying because I'm going to fucking do it. Like that, it was a threat more than anything. Like that, and that's what actually brought me to doing these shows. I started this off by myself on my own YouTube, where I, originally intended to do like a podcast about the show Bonanza. Like that's literally where this started. And then like 5 minutes later, it was like, AI took my job, and then that's where it went. And that's why I am here now. And so there was a journey involved with that, but that's what it ended up being. Like there has been people people think that you become a socialist just because you read some theory. You become a socialist or a communist because your life got fucked and you're tired of living.
You read theory. You read theory to figure out like what happened. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. It's like because you've lived it. Like I have lived like shit my entire life, and it's not like just barely making it. Like we're that like if you're like slightly drowning,
yeah, it's. You've got the subsistence wages. You are paid enough by capital to not die, but that's about it.
That's exactly it. Where it's essentially it's like you're just getting waterboarded your entire life since childhood. Even my parents were boomers, and they essentially, even though they had different experiences with their lives, like I said this last week, I think also is that like boomers were very entitled because they grew up with that post-war money, and their parents had really secure jobs, and they were in unions, and everybody
was the last generation to have the gold standard that went away.
Right,
in 1974.
it really was. It was almost its own little mini gilded age, not like the gilded, but they're like a mini gilded age, right? So we end up with these people who like, okay, now you're out on your own, and now you're trying to fight your way through with your family through a '90s economy, which is just, not as bad as it is now, but not much better. And the wars were really fucked up at the time too. The 90s were a very big precursor to what's going on now. And then you had these people that really couldn't function because the adults, they really were very bad at functioning because just all across the board, because they just didn't know how. They didn't understand why they didn't have the job guarantees their parents had. They didn't understand why there were no unions. They didn't understand why they weren't getting, their parents got paid more money than they did. They didn't understand how they couldn't make it work, and that was everybody I knew for the most part growing up, and myself. That's what it was. So that leads to a lot of problems. That leads to a lot of issues, and personally, a lot of abuse, that people don't realize is going on.
It was also the peak, which is kind of more sad to think about. Mid-90s, that's as high as the neoliberal bullshit machine ever got, and we've been just chasing that ever since.
Yes, and that's exactly right. Like it like the 80s, things were going really good, and that's why Reagan, people actually bought into that and believed it, even though he was just setting things up for the disaster that they are now.
It's like from Little Mermaid to 9/11, like that. Like
right?
18 to 20 year period. That was the peak of American society.
Yeah, that was like the best that anybody could do. And then, but everybody I knew was flailing very badly. Like the school systems were dog shit, and there were like started to see like the issue between like childcare and low wages. Like, okay, so like a parent should go like earn just enough for daycare instead of staying home with the kids. We started to see those problems. We started to see everything that we are in full-fledged mode of now. People
started going bankrupt from hospital bills.
Yes,
it was getting more common.
That was something that was a big issue with my family. Was a health situation, and and medical bankruptcies over and over again, and then to the point where then it was decided, well, you can't declare bankruptcy on medical debt anymore. So, and I don't want to get into my whole life story here because it's really not something I want to talk about. I really don't, and I really don't want to relive that time. But that I was there, and I have kind of a responsibility to say something about it, right? So
and the conditions you like grew up in and existed in are why you are. I mean, it's the same for all of us. Like how you live your life affects what your politics are going to be, like the way you think about things. I mean, you may have a more sympathetic look towards, I don't know, investment bankers if you grew up the child of an investment banker or saw a lot of benefit from it.
It was I went to a very poor school but there was the rich kids, very, very rich. It was not just like medium. There was super rich. They're dangerous, like literally dangerous. Stay away from them. And everybody else super poor, and then like ultra poor. I was in the super poor, not the ultra, but
That's one
but
step
the
above.
right, yeah, I was like, yeah, right, like, and that's what it was. Like, no, the rich kids were actually dangerous because we saw them getting out of trouble right and left. And the cops were really, really bad news. They were all tied in together. And I mean, like, when these kids when I'm talking about super rich, I'm talking about they had Hummers. Like they had like, real like real ultra rich kids, a very small amount of them, but they were very dangerous. And it was because their parents usually owned a string of businesses or something in
Yeah,
town.
like he owns the Burger Kings.
Right,
Both Burger
exactly,
Kings. Whoa.
yeah, and they were always there was a lot of extreme sexism and racism going on, and which is something that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And very, very dangerous. You didn't want to hang around them because you knew if you got in trouble with them, even if they liked you, if you got in trouble with them, you were going to be the one that took the heat, right? Like they were going to pile everything on you because they could afford the lawyer and you couldn't. So everybody basically stuck to their own for that. You might talk to them a little in school, but you basically just stayed away from them because they were dangerous, especially if you were a girl. And that's kind of where we were going with. Do you have any?
Yeah, it was a good transition. No, it was good. Let it flow.
Right. Well, I didn't want to. If you had a thought, I didn't want to cut you off from getting to say anything else about it. But the reason I wanted to get into this next topic is because part of why we are here with this whole Trump Schmilan thing is because of this kind of Andrew Tating of society. And there was a commentary that was recently made about that. Because it was made through fiction. I keep calling it a documentary, and it's not 100%. If you hear me say it and I say it, I don't mean to.
This is not a true story.
It's not a true story, completely fictional story. But it was very true to life because they did a thing that made it seem very realistic. It's called Adolescence, just came out on Netflix. Netflix content is generally dog shit, but every now and again they get a winner. So this was
they make so much. It's like some of it's good, bad.
Yeah, right. And some of it's just like, oh my god, this is like, it's either really, really good or like the worst thing that anyone has ever produced ever. So like every now and again they have a winner. Okay, so it's called Adolescence. It was co-created by one of the stars, Stephen Graham, who you might remember as playing Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire, and he was in the pirate movies. He's pretty popular British actor. This is a British story, but it really hits home, here too, with a couple of big differences. But they did something kind of unusual that made it very true to life. And the reason I keep referring to it as a documentary is they filmed it. It's 4 episodes. They filmed it without, each episode is filmed in full without any cuts.
All 4 are like one shots.
Yes, one shot.
God.
The exact. So it's like, which is really, really hard to do.
Yeah, it takes a lot of, because you got to plan. You got to think about it.
Yeah, right. And it's so hard. It's not just hard on the actors, because like, actors do theater, right? Like they know what that's like. But you got to have somebody, leading the camera people around so they don't trip or they go backwards upstairs, and like we're doing it in one shot. And they're also doing it in a way that it's like maybe an actor's back of their heads in the shot or something. Like it's not always exactly like beautiful cinematography. The idea of it being to play into the idea that like in real life you don't get to cut and get the nicest pieces of the banana, like you have to have the like the realistic. Sometimes you can't hear exactly what they're saying. Sometimes they're accidentally stepping on each other's lines. Sometimes you're not getting the best lighting or the best shot or whatever. You're not going to win any cinematography awards here for this. But the point that they're making with that, the story that they tell, and I really can't help but spoil it. So if you pause now and go watch it if you don't want to spoil.
Sorry, I'm just Wikipediaing around, and one of the guys, like, there's 2 creators. One of them is Jack Thorne. Also, it's British. Didn't know it was a British show.
It's
British though, but it's the same guy who wrote the stage play for the Harry Potter musical, The Cursed Child. That's weird.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I just know the other guy. Stephen Graham is the star. He plays the dad, and he's a pretty famous British actor. If you look at a picture of him, you'll probably recognize him. Anyways, he
co-wrote Tron 3. Just doing a lot of stuff.
Right? Well, I don't think that they're on the same political level as this, but the idea behind the whole thing is just that the story is Stephen Graham is a father. There's a family. It's an average British family. The police literally burst in on them one day and take their 13-year-old son into custody under the guise that he has. They have some pretty compelling evidence that he has killed his female classmate. He denies. They take him in, and the whole thing goes through the whole process. So something that I can tell you about that is really strange is like that. It's not a murder mystery, because you know that the British love their murder
It's not a
mysteries.
mystery. It's
There's
just a
really no
murder.
mystery about it, right? Like, it's very clear. They've got a video of the kid killing the other
I
kid.
do want to point
Like,
out just how freaking sinister they made this boy
oh,
look
he
in
does
this
an excellent
post.
job in this too, as well. It's like his acting was actually very, very good. But the point that they're making is with this is it's a commentary on the modern standard, the new kind of mutation of toxic masculinity, and what masculinity really means to the people who are experiencing it. And just at the same time that I had seen this, because I turned it on without actually knowing what it was about, I just heard that it was good, so I wanted to check it out. I love TV and storytelling, so I wanted to see. And then found out that's what it was about. But I had just right at that time started seeing commentary online about how apparently Gen Z kids, the boys, are like super susceptible to this misogynistic ideals of things, like more so maybe than before. I know that if mostly women can look at this, their own histories and know like it couldn't be worse than when I was a kid, but apparently it is, because I guess the common idea among the younger generation right now is that it's exaggerated, it's being made up, and that like there are, they follow the Andrew Tate model, which is specifically referenced in the show, where they're at a school at one point, and the teacher's like, oh yeah, I hear the kids talking about him. And then they show that there's a radicalization happening, how it's just different than it was for previous generations, because as millennials, we knew what it was like before the internet. We at least have some basis of reference of life before. You remember when you first got, your first AOL disc in the mail, and you started doing that.
Yeah, the last people who had like the computer room, where
Right,
there was
yeah,
the
exactly
computer
that.
in a
Exactly.
place, and you had to
We
go
didn't have
talk to
cell
it.
phones. The cell phones we had came a lot later, and they were Nokias. Like they weren't. You played Centipede on it if you
I
were
remember
lucky.
thinking text messages are dumb. Why wouldn't you just call them?
Right, yeah.
Like,
If they'd
now I'm
if
like,
it had
what?
come out the other way around, we'd have been like, "Oh my god, phone calls are amazing!
Yeah,
You
it's
don't have
crazy.
to," right? But it's just the idea of this is, it is a very good demonstration of something that maybe a lot of us don't realize is going on necessarily, even if you do have children that age, because that was sort of the point they were making. And they did, I think, went a little easy on the parents, because they were like, we got him the computer, he asked for a computer, we didn't know what he was doing, and we failed him in this, that, and the other. We didn't know he was up there getting fucking radicalized. Like, all right, like, okay, we'll roll with it. I'll give you, maybe you should have paid more attention, and that's a moral you're kind of put out here. But we were constantly told, don't talk to strangers and don't put anything on the internet because it'll never go away. And it was like we were attacked by these messages. And then it very much became talk to everybody, do everything, whatever you want is fine. Like I don't really see a lot of enforcement of rules happening in these younger. I don't know. I don't have kids. Let's be clear about that. But I don't know if that is the case or not. Now, Jared was a teacher for a time, and so did you happen to? Were you there? Was there an era there that you witnessed any of this happening with any of the boys necessarily, or was the Andrew Tate thing really going on, or that message, that masculinity message, that was was that really a thing?
I worked in the public school system, not really before Andrew Tate, because I know he's been around actually for a surprisingly long time. Where I'm like, who's this brand new thing's like, no, he's been on the
I say
internet.
him because he's the figurehead of this shit. We have tons of
Oh, yeah.
commentators that fall into that, but I say him because everybody knows who I'm talking about.
Like, I'm sorry if I end up throwing things into categories that aren't in the same category, but like the whole, I do remember seeing, I was around for like the men's rights movement, which it's like a lot of these like weird, it's different ways that reaction can present itself. I know that I'm a broken record with like, Jared, it's not just that everything, the solution is communism. Well, where these weird problems come from, it's, you have the cognitive. People aren't actually stupid. Like the people, like people go, oh, the mob rule of the general hoi polloi. Bleh. Like I think it's just really classist to think of like, well, anything that like the vast group likes must be somehow bad or worse, or that like the general public is stupid. I don't think they are. I think they're actually relatively smart. So even if you don't know exactly what is wrong, you can tell that something is wrong, and that's how you end up with like. I think that we need to be able to address Nazis, like, on their own terms, not in that if they have a point, they can't, like, to counter people's points by doing that and not just going, you're a Nazi and you're bad, blah. It's like, no, I can academically break down why white supremacy is, like, wrong and bad and doesn't make scientific sense, cultural sense, etc., etc. Same thing with all of every shade of reaction. If you're like a hardcore, if you're in a religious situation, like, a lot of people end up in frickin' Scientology. Why? Because they can tell something is wrong, but they aren't sure what. So then someone runs up and it's like, guess what? It's actually ancient aliens or something. Just anything to keep you away from reality, from what the thing that is actually wrong, which is that we have socialized labor and privatized accumulation of profit and product. That's the primary contradiction. That's the thing that we are working towards, that we must solve to move forward as a species. It is what relates all of the things that we talk about on this show. Yes. So if you're just like a guy, so I'm going to not talk about kids necessarily, but let's say the parents of those kids, because we're now a generation removed from that. Let's say I'm a person my own age and I got into the men's rights, because there's some things they bring up, the rational kernel within, quote, men's rights groups, such as like custody battles. We do know that historically custody situations are very biased towards the guy. Very rarely gets the kids, even in situations where when you look at it, you're like, dude, this is ridiculous. That guy's great. She sucks. Why did we get in this freaking thing? And those situations do happen. And what's the other one? Like you'll hear there can be an anti-military. There can be an anti-military tint to it, where they'll be like, look, it's only men who go and fight and die in these wars. And I'm over here like, well, but it could be no one. No one could be going and dying. The fact that you acknowledge the wars as dumb, okay, we got it. We got somewhere. We have like a foothold. Let's talk about what the actual issues are. Because yeah, in reality, it's not that like women are ruining your life. It's right.
Which is where this is.
That's where it gets directed. It's like something is wrong. What is it? It's that women aren't obedient or something, right?
Yeah,
like
it is.
That's why society is crumbling, because the woman's supposed to be in a kitchen or whatever the fuck.
Right.
Anything to keep you from identifying the actual issues.
That's where essentially the portrait that I almost said it again, documentary, the miniseries paints, is saying that you're dealing with a kid who is too young to understand what he's even doing.
Exactly.
but that he's being indoctrinated by his friends and egged on by his friends, and he's seeing this content online. And even the kid, when he's getting therapized, says like, well, I don't really believe that women are inferior to men or anything like that, but I do think maybe there is something to the whole 80-20 theory. And you know what that is?
No.
You heard that? Okay, so the 80-20 theory apparently is something that's really big about incels, and that's where this whole thing came from. This kid was made fun of by this girl for being an incel, and he thought because like she had gotten to a situation where she had posted like a topless photo online and kids shared it around, and he wasn't cool that the kids shared it around, but he went to her thinking that like because she was in a vulnerable place that maybe he could ask her out and she'd date him, and she rebuffed him and he killed her. So it's basically what it comes to. So you, and everyone
in this is 13 or like under.
Yes, 13-year-old. And that's what you get out of this, is that the idea is that like they don't really understand the actions of their consequences, because they don't really understand consequences yet. And they're dealing with stuff that's way above their level. So that's where the whole kind of idea of this comes into. So the 80-20 thing that they're talking about, he says, well, I don't believe all this and that and the other, and I don't think it was right to share the picture around or whatever, but I do think the 80-20 thing is something. And the therapist's like, okay, what's 80-20? So, and I've heard this before. Apparently this is something in the incel community or the people that...
I have one guess before you tell me. Is it that like only 20% of guys get like 80% of the women or something?
Exactly backwards. If you took like, it's exactly backwards. It's only 80%, like it's 80% of women only want 20% of men. Like if you took 100 of each, like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to say, it's kind of a little confusing. If you took like 100 of each, it's like 80% of that 100 of the women would only choose 20% of the 100 of the men. Like it's sort of the idea. It's really kind of far out there, but it's like, I kind of see the logic, let's say. And
are they just saying that hot people are kind of rare? Is that all we're getting at with that? Only 20% of men are hot. That's I think with that. Oh, I thought you just didn't think I was funny, but I think Nicolette or I have a crappy connection right now. Who could it be? I keep talking because if I'm the one that you can hear, I don't want there to just be dead air. But yeah, it's a whole lot of the as we get into different groups where they're like, I have the answer. The answer is that women are bad, and that's why the world seems like something is wrong with it. They will build
Okay.
up whole big weird pseudo-scientific things
Yes.
like an 80-20, things that when you think about them not at all, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Then you think about it for a second, you're like, oh wait, that doesn't actually make sense. Like that's there's always
Right.
a whole body of pseudoscience under it to try and hold together how it's. Oh no, what's the actual problem? No, come back. It's women. We promise you.
Right.
Like,
And that is the core problem. And that's what I was going back to saying before in the beginning, where like if you were a girl, you stayed away from at school, you stayed away from the rich boys because they were very, very dangerous to you. Boys were very dangerous in general. And it was very hard. Parents were never able to warn you for the right reasons because they didn't understand them. Because these misogyny things change. I know for a fact that like my mom was, when she was in school, was very badly sexually harassed, on a regular basis. I was too, in a different way. Every girl I know was. Every girl she knew was. I'm sure it's still happening. In fact, women often cannot, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It's like physical. I was, I've been hit and beaten and attacked physically by my males, like every possible way that you could imagine, from spitting to actual getting punched or sexually assaulted. And then there's the thing of it is that they, for studies, they cannot often not find enough women who have not experienced some version of that in their life to be control groups in studies, because this is literally the experience of women. And that's not to say that obviously trans people can't be victimized or just other males can't be victimized by other males. I'm just saying, I'm talking numbers here. I'm talking numbers, because a lot of this, the misogyny idea comes out of hatred of women in one way or another. And then that can affect every person in every demographic of every community. Women who have hated other women and been harmful and hurtful to other women. We see that in politics quite a bit. Let's say gay males necessarily, you might know, like aren't necessarily exempt from that. I have known, a lot of women who feel comfortable having gay men as their friends because there's no expectation there, like they're not going to be harmful to them. But at the same time, I have known gay men in my life who have serious women hatred issues, but it comes out in a different way. It's not necessarily.
That's one of the
I'm
discourses.
talking out of my depth here.
It's one of the discourses actually that we go around with on the part of Twitter that I hang around with, which is where it's like, guys, we get it. You like other guys, but you're just saying that boobs are gross. Bleh! And it's like, what are you, 5 years old? Like, maybe we could grow up.
I actually know gay men who are like, I love boobs, but I'm into dudes. To each their own, and that's sort of the idea of it. But at the core of like, I think humanity, there is some sort of like biological factor that really predisposes, let's say, males to hate women for various reasons, whether it's something their mothers or grandmothers or aunts, or if it's being rebuffed by women their own age, or it's or just thinking all women are sluts, and or won't, whatever. I think that there must be something there, because this is something that never seems to change but just mutate. And now we're looking at like a new generation of mutation where say like it's ingrained. It's way more than I am like a kid doing an act maybe against another kid, but having the thought that I'm superior to you and you're inferior to me because you won't date me and it's your fault, and then we see a lot of motivation behind a lot of, school shootings that have to do with those kinds of things as well. And then now we look at figures like, Trump and the whole grab him by the pussy, and Elon Musk, who is trying to impregnate every woman he can find because he thinks he's fucking Charlemagne or something.
A lot of kids.
And right. And so these messages are getting put out there that it's not only right, it's encouraged. And Trump recently just said he was going to try to get Andrew Tate and his brother or something out of trouble in Romania. So like we see that this is right.
Like,
Yeah.
Did he do crimes or not? Like, it seems like he goes to court, goes to trial, and he just back out, and you're like, what the fuck happened? Like,
we see we see the top rung of society, which is supposed to be a leadership, right? President is
He
supposed
was
to
in
offer
jail for like a
leadership.
month, right?
I think so. It was all like in Romania, and I try to stay away from all that shit as much as possible. Like that is not for me, right? So like and I just used Andrew Tate as the example of like how the thousands or hundreds of thousands of commentators out there that have shows like us that are talking about women being the issue, right? And there's always seems to be a connection between women and racism and like the hate thing. The hate thing always just it's like this. If you want to hate one, you end up learning why you got to hate another, and it's just this cyclical thing. Okay, yeah, Are You Time Traveler points out again, and I hate this. They were always told boys will be boys, when that kind of thing was happening, so they got the pass back then. And then when I was young, it was like it was starting to get like, oh well, you're not allowed to do this, don't do it. And then but nobody would do anything about it. And now it looks like we're in a situation where it's so culturally ingrained, so much younger, that I don't really know where the ends of that is, because we would have thought that this would have gone the other direction, sort of like smoking. Like, oh, we always knew smoking was bad. People were taking the risk. Most everybody liked to do it. But people were dying these really horrible wasting deaths. So people thought, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. So we see people smoking less and less and less because they got smarter and smarter and smarter, and there are campaigns against it, just like against, against misogyny, against assaulting women and things like this. But it seems to have gone in the other opposite direction, where now it's so it's acceptable, and it's not just ingrained the way it's always been ingrained, but now it's an acceptable form of discourse currency, and I don't know what that leads to ultimately, because one thing I think that always has to be understood about anything, like if a guy is like racist, right? But he's got friends who aren't, then those other guys are the only ones that are going to get through to him. Like no amount of people of color saying this is what we experience, this is our life, is going to make a damn bit of difference to that guy. If a guy is sexist against women, no amount of pleading and begging and crying from women, this is our experience, this is what it is going to make a damn bit of difference to that guy. He's got to hear from his peers. So, it's one of those situations where it's like, well, it's got to work itself out, but nobody really seems to know how to remedy this situation. And now we're, I guess, looking at a situation where it's taken another mutation with a new generation, and put us in a place where it's gone back to the boys will be boys kind of discourse. So it's like, well, they can do what they want. It's women's fault anyway, and women will blame women. And men will blame women, and different marginalized groups will blame women. It always seems to come down to women being the villain of everything, no matter what, because of these people's experience. So it makes me wonder if it's not some sort of biological disposition that allows for, that kind of thing to happen. But now we see the people at the top literally defending it and acting, as in great ways about putting down women and minorities. To try to regain some imaginary version of man is head of household, and you are baby maker, and you make me the meals, and that kind of shit. But it's being very openly embraced, and I think that's very strange. And I don't know what to do about it.
Historically, when you look through for ways for times and places where, like, I guess bigotry has decreased, or how did, like, through. If I try to approach this materially and historically, you go back and go like, okay, well, who has overcome what, and like how was it done? Because like the U.S., obviously things used to be worse, whatever that means. I mean, there are a lot of laws where you just straight up did not actually have equal rights for both genders, where it'd be like, oh yeah, it's a different set of rules for one than the other. But you look at countries like, well, the U.S. included, but I'll go a little bit farther out here. China. Wow, talking about China, I can't believe it. I brought it back to China. Before the commies came in, you had shit like foot binding. You had I googled it and I'm like, widow chastity. Okay, so I guess societally it was not acceptable for a woman to like remarry after her husband dies. I assume is what that means. Oh, parental control of so arranged marriages, like concubines and all this shit. Like, guess when that started going away? 1951, when the commies came into power. I actually had my dad trying to make a point about how China and communism, of course, is bad because of things like foot binding, etc. I'm like, no. They got rid of that shit. They're the ones who put a stop to that.
They're the ones that wiped that out, yeah.
because it's really, really difficult to, like, you can't, it's like you were just saying, you can't, like, berate someone into, it's like, I'm not gonna, like, intellectually convince you to, like, let go of baggage that you have personally, like, being weird
Right.
towards people, but you can fix people's economic situations. And as women in China were basically throwing, all right, you're in the workforce now, baby. You're just like everybody else. We're all going to work. I think, as Mao said, women hold up half the sky. Like, if we actually are treated culturally, not culturally, that's the wrong one. If we are treated at least like under the law and economically, the things that we can actually control, because you can't say, hey, decrease the racism by 5%, but you can,
Right.
like, I don't know, increase, like, pay this person. If you eliminate the material negative impacts of sexism, racism, homophobia, etc., if there is no actual, like, even if somebody harbors bad feelings in their heart, but they are unable to, like, I don't know, keep you out of housing or keep you from getting food, etc., and you're, like, economically sound, that decreases how shitty your life is because of those things. And then the idea is, and historically it's the only way it's ever happened, over time it kind of starts working itself out. You don't
Run out of
have
people to blame for your problems, like
if the problems start getting fixed, then suddenly it's like how do you actual friendships made usually through, like, both of you are working towards a common goal and you have to, like, struggle and overcome obstacles together, and, like, that's how you end up not being as much of an asshole. Like, that's how it happened to me. That's how I, like, know and work with people. It's like, oh yes, of course, this group of people who I've various experiences with, then it becomes not a big deal. I'm sure the first time they saw, like, women driving trucks in, well, name a country, in any country, it's like, oh. But then
no,
after, like,
no.
5-10 years, that's like, oh, okay, that's just a thing they
It's
do
just
now.
normal.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it becomes normalized, and I would love if at least in America, I can only talk about America because where I'm from. I would love if American men and boys had more useful outlets for, lack of a better word, I don't know, masculine expression. You know what's very masculine? Rebuilding your country that's been gutted by finance capital, and, like, improving, oh my god, the water system, whoa, like, working
People
towards
will really get into you if you do those
everybody.
things.
You're probably going to find, you might even start a relationship doing that. You guys will both be building a hospital, and you'll be like, man, I love the way you build that hospital, and then you'll go on a date.
Yeah, right. And like a lot of the answer to the question of, like, oh, what are we going to do about all this hatred and violence and bad shit against women, and then the conversation turned into male loneliness, and it's like, god damn
Just
it.
all lonely, man.
Like,
Freaking
okay,
global
that is by
loneliness.
design in this country. We are, like, meant to be sequestered apart from each other. We are meant to be deprived of community. That's
Mhm.
the entire idea of it, to make sure that to teach you in every, like, ingrained way, that even just the fact that you own a car is that you could be on your own and do your own, because we are taught that if you have to rely on anybody else for anything, that you are a failure and a loser and you're bad. And now we're starting to see either, a new rise to mutual aid, and realize that, like, well, these people wouldn't need this if they weren't in such shit conditions, and they shouldn't be in such shit conditions, and there shouldn't be such a disparity. So that's, again, it really does come back to economics. Like I say, I don't really know how to fix it because that's on a social level. But if you fix, because you can't fix it on a social level, you can't say enough or do enough, because, like, what women are there, like in America, at least we don't walk around, like, in full, like any kind of burqa situation or anything. Like, you could see us, we're here. You can't blame that. Like, that I didn't know. Obviously we have very bad sex education and things like that in interpersonal educations. But that's the same thing. If these people get into, have more to live for, and realize that there is a camaraderie, literal comrades to be made and created in your community, maybe not necessarily the people you don't like or don't agree with, but the internet, where the internet has gone completely wrong direction in that way, should have brought work to bring more people together. And it seems like that is like the secondary to tearing people apart, which is, I'm not anti-internet here. I'm just saying, like, the way that it ended up working out, people just love to fight so much and blame other people for things that they fail to see the big picture, which is exactly what Jared just said. Is if things are better, then you run out of people to blame.
Yeah. the only way to fix the problem is to begin fixing the problem, and then it's amazing how much this other stuff starts working itself out. How many bad relationships would have ended much earlier if, well, the one of them owns the apartment, so I can't move out. But like, it's
Exactly.
usually some kind of, the only way you end up forced to stay or be with these people that are harmful to you is usually because you're forced into by circumstance, usually
Economically,
like,
or
can you
just that you
afford to
can't
transfer
leave. You
schools?
can't afford a divorce. You can't afford childcare on your own. The husband has the health insurance that covers you and your kids,
Absolutely.
and and by the government like both sides of the government, quote unquote, constantly keeping that going, where they're benefiting and keeping you from benefiting, keeping you from organizing, continually benefits them. So it kind of comes back around to what we were talking about, earlier in the hour, that we, like if we were getting what we needed, and the computers are running things, and we had these 2-hour work years, like where we should be, where China in a lot of cases already is. We always got to bring up China in every episode. We have to do it, making us look like idiots, because we are idiots. But we wouldn't be if we weren't forced to fight like animals over every scrap of anything that we could possibly get. We would be so much better off if we were on like kind of an economic plateau where we all basically were in the same area, like some a little more, some a little less, fine, you're entitled to it. But if we had a baseline, something like a UBI, but via robot tax, which no one is proposing, which is exactly what we need. And always, how would we pay for it? Automation, and there was just a fucking thing, I hate to pivot again, but there was just a thing like, there was this mega trend that started really, really fast, where it was like, convert every image into like a Miyazaki image, you know what I mean? Like, convert every image, you could do it. And then like the chat GBT people were like, please stop, you're melting our servers. We're not fucking kidding. We cannot cool them down fast enough. So if that will resonate with no one, because they're like, look at my cute picture, so that will resonate with absolutely no one, because nobody knows how anything works, and they're just a slave to it at this point. So I don't even remember where I was going with that now.
You have a lot more time to go on dates and improve your life and learn a talent, get a hobby, but if you're not being forced to like scrub out the inside of a Subway sandwich shop for no reason,
right?
Like,
yeah, no, yeah, we're out here like fighting like gangs of rats over fucking like Subway pizza that we found, and we're not living lives that we should be living, which has always been a major tenet of this show, and that's why China comes up so much on our show, and we're the idiots that we found out after the fact that people are getting paid to influencers are getting paid to go and be like, China's so great. We're like, we're doing it for free. We're doing it for free all this damn time.
Should have paid me. I made a whole video about it. That's why when they brought up like, who was it, Cory Booker getting 40,000 views, I'm like, there's this guy I've never heard of in my life who's currently just live vlogging in China and has like 700, not 700, I think it was 30 million consecutive or something insane. Several million. It was over a million at least. But
a lot.
Guy, Speed, I Show Speed, never heard of him. He's just goes for like 6 hours a day, has a little crew with him with phones, and they just stream him walking around China, and then he's famous, so people will figure out where he is, and then they show up, and basically it's just like a series of performances kind of happening, because there's just a big crowd around him, of course. Now they figure out where he is. People, these are Chinese people. Remember, they have no freedom. They don't know what anything is. They're not allowed to watch YouTube, so they don't know what anything is, because they're just really...
They don't know any of the things at all.
Brainwashed morons over there.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny. What happened with the whole Red Note thing, where everybody jumped on Red Note, and they're like, "Please help us," because they didn't realize we had to go tell. Like, we all like showed up in a jalopy and jumped off the back, and we're like, "We're dying! Help us!"
And it's been great. All the rich, bougie Chinese people are getting to see, wow, America does like put you in some crazy conditions. Yeah. when we all found out that China doesn't have personal property tax, like, keep your corporate property taxes, but your particular domicile you should not keep paying. It's insane that you're like, all right, this old lady, she's paid her house off 40 years ago, but she still has to give us $1,000 once a year at least in property tax. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's property tax.
I'm just gonna go into my normal China rants. I am not even going to try to do a song this week, because every time I do, my tech explodes. So I'm going to take a week off, and maybe next week it will be normal.
Yeah, we can maybe try some different things and see what's going on, or
We stayed
figure
up like
something
the
out.
whole. I think you dropped for like 20 seconds, and that was it. Like this was a
Yeah.
nice tick.
We actually managed to have a pretty decent show this week. So fingers crossed that will keep going on, and we will keep talking about China. So, well, I mean, like, they pushed us into it. Not China, but like our stupid government pushed us into this. I mean, nobody talked about China like 5 or 6 years ago. Like nobody was talking about it. The last couple of cycles. This
They
just happened
basically have-
recently.
They seem to. It's like China decides, like, all right, our shit's pretty dope right now. Look, everybody, and everyone's like, whoa.
Yeah, they're like,
China,
the
oh my
cars
God.
drive and park themselves, and you can get one for $20.
This is soft. I saw some commie I like talking about like how the kind of stuff that China does, where this really is all like, I don't know how like dastardly evil plan, but in terms of soft power moves, China is just freaking popping off these last couple of
Right.
years. We used to be like that. The U.S. used to be able to be like, look at the shit we have, and everyone, whoa! Like Disney literally was getting paid like by like them and the government organ. At the same time, he's figuring out like how to use electronic tape to like make the birds move in the frickin' tiki lounge. Like that same technology is like making weapon systems over here. And the other countries would look at that, look at the frickin' like, wow, look at them. They're just like flexing. They have birds that move their mouths and sing.
Right,
America's
exactly.
crazy. Like back in
Yeah.
the '60s, we used to be doing that shit, and now it's they made the fucking
Yeah.
they made the, I think the way he phrases, like, they made the IDF Snow White movie and everybody hated it. Like it does.
Right?
Our
Yeah.
soft power just doesn't work.
Yeah, but
bad.
the message has really been lost, and it's definitely the direction we want to see things going in. But we also were tired of being at the beginning of it. We want to be at the end where
move
we get the
on.
stuff and the things, and we have the money and we like. I get really tired of the job guarantee conversation and we're going to take our gerbs. Yeah, they should. I don't want one. No, neither do you. None of you do. You want to sit around in the sunshine and play guitar all day. Everybody do. That's what we want as human people, and that's what we should get. And that's what China is looking a whole lot like to us at this point. So it's like,
They
we're
got
not
dark
doing
factories. They run
Yeah.
entire factories where no actual people are working, other than like a guy going like checking, making sure it's still going. But like
Right.
that's it. Just fully
yeah,
automated.
If a computer can do your job, you shouldn't have to be able to be doing it. But that doesn't mean that now we have, we turn into Metropolis, the original one, not the remake thing or
Where
whatever.
no
it
one
was.
works.
But nobody works. Not that we feed the machines so the rich people can have a good time, but like nobody needs to be doing work that they don't need to be doing. We need to be able to live and enjoy and exist and be human, happy people. So if we don't stop ourselves, we're gonna keep going, people. So we're always like this when we get together. Like we don't really talk much through the week because he's like busy as hell,
Always
and I'm
running around.
running around doing music, making fans, and I'm over here just doing whatever the hell I do. So we get together on these shows and we're just like, like people on a lunch date that talk shit about everybody that they know. So yeah, it's our weekly talk shit lunch date. So, well, thank you for joining us for it. We appreciated getting to talk to whoever wants to listen. We love to talk to you on air, take questions and comments as much as we can, if we can just like stop our own mouths for a minute to be able to do it. So hang in and see if maybe next week Jared can treat us to a lovely styling of music. We'll see. We haven't had much success with that lately, but we will be back next week with whatever fresh hell is going on. Then we'll try to shave some bits off the shit brick of news and try and share them with you. So take care, everybody. Take care of each other. Make some friends. Do things.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.